Welcome to another episode of Tangled Rights. I'm one of your hosts, Justin.
Don't sound so sad. It's episode 43.
I'm not sad.
We're almost to a year. We have something fun happening today.
Probably not going to be super fun. Not for me anyway. But I made a bet. And so we've compromised. I'm going to get shocked with the probes. But because there's a couple of little razors in there that stick into you that are probably about half an inch long with like barbs on them, we're just going to tape those to my back. I've seen that it works that way. It's a complete nervous system override, so that's what we're doing. And Shane is going to be the one pulling the trigger. And I don't know if you can see, there's like a little dot. That's where it'll hit if you were to shoot it that way. So the thing is, for everybody, it goes for a 30-second ride. He's been instructed not to give me the full 30. If he does, I'm going to do something awful to him if I survive.
There will be consequences.
There will be fucking consequences. He's going to get stitches.
Shout out to Brandon also.
Brandon over at Recon Arms for having the wildest stuff.
Sponsor, Recon Arms, gave us a discount.
Yeah.
If we send the video of him.
And we're going to send the video today because we're going to put it on my phone, send it to everybody.
Shout out to Recon Arms here in Las Vegas.
Making sure not to drink water, and I already just took one piss. I'm going to take another one so that this way I don't.
Why shouldn't you drink water?
Well, I just don't want to piss my pants again.
You can possibly
pee yourself.
Urinate yourself.
You can urinate yourself.
Urinate yourself?
Who says it that way?
I don't know.
Anyway,
we got to try and be like, what? How would you say that in court, in front of a judge that would want to hear?
Your
it
Honor, when the police
way.
officers deployed the taser as a less than lethal countermeasure, my client urinated in his pants in an uncontrollable, involuntary and dramatic manner. Whatever. Shut up. I'm making shit up.
All right.
I'm trying to do this fucking sticker without ruining the box.
We are licensed attorneys in Nevada. Justin's also licensed in Kansas. This is not intended to create a legal relationship, an attorney-client relationship with you. This is not specific legal advice. We'll talk about a lot of cases, as we always do, and we like to have some fun as well. Lethal?
Less lethal.
Less lethal.
Well, I think that's non-lethal.
It's non-lethal, yeah. Well,
I mean,
less is...
less meaning it can kill you, so yeah, less lethal.
You could die, I guess. That's
how wild.
You could die driving a car every day.
Yeah, no, but what if I've got some like weird heart defect?
That's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Wouldn't that suck?
I want to tell you a story. I don't think we talked about anything I'm going to tell you about today.
Absolutely not.
You ready for this?
I've been busy with
We've
actual
been
work.
busy running around. I was in court today. I'm the one wearing the tie.
You did.
Today.
I had court today too, and Justice Cherry was on the bench, and so I tucked my fucking shirt in because I go in there in jeans and a sport coat, thinking, oh, it's going to be crawl. She'll give me a pass because I had one hearing, and it's Cherry. And so I run out of the courtroom after we did the Pledge of Allegiance, and I tucked my pants in, or tucked my button down into my pants.
You did the Pledge of Allegiance in the courtroom?
Cherry always does the Pledge of Allegiance.
That's cool.
He always begins with it.
I've never heard.
Do you know it?
Oh, it's been years.
Try it.
Maybe. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
For
which it stands, undivided.
one nation.
Well, I don't know. All right. One nation, undivided.
One nation
with
under
liberty
God,
and liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all.
It's been a long time.
All right, let's talk about it.
So we're going to start in New Mexico, not the old Mexico. This is the New Mexico.
Nuevo Mexico.
This is Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've been
Walter?
there. We've been there together. Not about Walter. Well, I absolutely love the show Breaking Bad.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
I loved it. And then Better Call Saul, I think, took it even further. As a lawyer, what Saul Goodman goes through, like, my bad. What Saul Goodman goes through trying to drum up business.
Being poor, beating the street.
Yeah, beating the street. Like, that's kind of something we can relate to. Less than... in the criminal world, having less than desirable clients come to you and maybe have some schemes sometimes that they're trying to ring you in on. Like, you can relate to some of that stuff. Maybe some of our clients have been drug lords. We haven't had any of those try to bring us into their
not yet
drug scheme. Not yet. But it's just something that I watch,
guys,
while it's good TV and something you can just relate to when there's, the big white shoe law firm have you ever heard the term white shoe? They have the fancy shoes that come
Like
in.
wingtips?
That's like it's just like the high end law firms that come in that have high rates. And we're doing criminal law and, slumming it up with some people sometimes that people wouldn't want to be seen representing. So we're the common man attorney.
Regular people having a bad day.
The common man lawyer. So
I'm a regular guy, and I've had plenty of bad days.
It is different because Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman kind of goes between that. And this is what everybody's saying is the real life Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman. Okay? The real life. Before we get too deep into it, I'll plug my hat for the city of Albuquerque. The Dukes, if you don't know much about New Mexico, there is a lot of history, a lot of Spanish history. So I think that's why they were called the Dukes before. They are now the Isotopes, which is famous in the Simpsons episode. There's a Duke on the back, tan hat, purple. What shade of purple is that? Maroony. Maroon. Bill says the word Dukes. Love my minor league hats. So this is a guy by the name of Thomas Clear III. Okay, he's an attorney at Clear and Clear Law Firm.
Clear is spelled like the regular word?
Yes, CLEAR. Something we see is there's an old-timey law firms here of attorneys that have been practicing 30 or 40 years that are still around.
And they will tell you.
And they don't have websites. They don't have any kind of online presence. It's hard to find information on some of these people. And since they've been around so long, they get business. We try alternative methods to try and get business, podcast being one of them, talking to you guys, getting you to know us. But Thomas Clear III had been, has no online presence, but yet gets business. Okay. Mm-hmm. It comes out recently. Thomas Clear III is a DUI lawyer. They call him DWIs there. He gets arrested and gets some federal charges because there's accusations. He is running the DUI streets. He is having police officers who are arresting people for DUI refer him cases, giving them kickbacks, and then the courts are dismissing these cases. So they were tracking his cases specifically, kind of did a sting on him, looking at him. And so there was an undercover operation where they went and recorded an interview with Thomas Clear's paralegal assistant that said, hey, we can guarantee you a dismissal of your DUI case. But our charge is $8,500 to $9,500.
Guaranteed dismissal.
Guaranteed dismissal, he said.
That sounds like they're writing checks that they're not going to be able to cash.
Yeah. Well, no, here's the thing is they were getting all dismissed. So there's a ring.
It was the judge,
not necessarily the judge,
the prosecutor, the defense attorney,
the judge,
and the cops, and everybody's making money.
Yeah. So there's a group of, I think, 5 to 8 cops that have been brought into this. There might be more that were smarter that didn't have, the paper trail.
Yeah.
So they looked at Thomas Clear's record and he would get dismissals on all of these DUIs. There's cops on some that have body cams saying, hey, I can recommend you a lawyer. And part of this thing was a guy getting the recommendation for Thomas Clear. And so they kind of followed him along. Some of this information is getting brought out, piece by piece here. There are some studies that show a DUI in total cost you about $10,000 because getting your car out, car insurance, paying the lawyer,
if you get one,
doing the classes, your time lost,
because
interlock
system in your car,
interlock system, all of that. An average DUI, and this is an old study, costs you about $10,000.
Mine was about $7,000.
I'm sure it's even more now. And there's incalculables too.
And that was in 2007.
And time and stress.
And at every level of professional checks, right, for the bar, for the DA's office, I had to answer new questions. The bar brought me in for an in-person interview after I took it, before I passed character and fitness.
Plenty of people.
And at the time, it was 10 years and 10 days after I'd gotten my misdemeanor DUI where I blew a .09. And the bar brings me in and asks me these questions. They're like, do you drink when you're mad? Do you drink when you're sad? Do you drink when this? Do you drink when that? Would you say that alcohol is a problem for you? Would you say that you blah, blah, blah? And like they kept asking me all these questions and I answered them and they were fine, whatever. But then the worst part was they'd already given me an offer letter for the DA's office. That's why I moved here. The second day of the bar exam, one of their investigators, Craig, I forget his last name, Males maybe, he calls me and he's like, so I get out of the bar, open my phone and there's a voicemail and I'm like, oh, it's somebody from the DA's office calling. And he's like, hey, we just need to do some more background stuff before we can officially extend you the offer. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've got an offer letter in my email. And he's like, oh no, that's conditional. I'm like, okay, well, what do you need me to do? And he's like, well, we just need to answer some questions about your criminal record. And I'm like, when? He's like, well, could you come in tomorrow? I'm like, no, tomorrow's the third day of the bar exam. He's like, oh, you're in the bar right now? Oh, well, just forget about this and get a hold of me next week. And it's like, what the fuck? I moved to another state across the country. I might not have a job. That shit is the worst part.
Was that on the break? Was that lunch break or after the second day?
I left my phone in the car.
So thankfully the third day is only a half day for the Nevada bar.
And thankfully I'm slow. So I'm able to compartmentalize really well.
Well,
because I was just like, fuck it, I got worse shit to worry about.
That's being in the military too, I'm sure. And
yeah, you learn stuff. But the frustrating part for me, and they still ask me questions. Like, I'm trying to think of the last one I did. When I did the Kansas bar, they made me answer all that stuff. And thank God that the clerk of the Caney Municipal Court was willing to get into the attic to find a record from 2007, like literally their banker's boxes, pull it, copy it, give it to me. Because they wanted the police report. They wanted all this, that, and the other to make sure like I wasn't being combative. And it was literally a misdemeanor where I blew 0.01 over. And if I would have been smart, I could have challenged it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. I was 21, broke, getting discharged, all that stuff.
You get a public defender or just not even getting an attorney?
Myself. They offered me a diversion. I was like, okay, whatever. I'll pay the extra $500.
Yeah, well.
But it isn't really diverted. The point is that it was diverted, but it wasn't. It's still on my fucking record.
So,
whores.
Yeah. So DUIs are a lot of stress, a lot of work, get an Uber. But if you end up getting charged with one, we're here for a lot less than $8,500. That price was... And... with a guaranteed dismissal, that might be a price you'd be willing to pay.
But the big thing is that I'm not in cahoots with the prosecution and the police. And if I got to say what I thought should happen to people like that, if they're convicted and found to have been, beyond a reasonable doubt, did what it's accused of them doing, that they should be executed.
What?
Those people?
Why? For racketeering?
With people's
money
liberty?
Scheme?
With people's liberty? Where they're being arrested, they're getting a criminal record?
They're not getting arrested just for no reason. I think they're
they are actually DUI?
I think they're actually DUI or suspected of DUI. Okay. Maybe the one that was a sting, he acted like it.
Public beating then? Like beaten in public?
You're bringing back public beatings. Okay.
Yeah, whipped.
All right.
10 lashes.
All right.
Starship Troopers, dude. I remember when Casper Van Dien got smoked.
We do DUIs for a lot cheaper than that.
Yes.
It's all case dependent. That's why that's why a lot of attorneys don't give out prices just willy-nilly online, because there's not usually just you're charged with DUI. There's usually DUI and something else, and you have
piece of advice,
reasons or information that you want to share with us that might affect how we charge things.
Both up and down.
Let's say your aunt was a nun who had never drank a drop of alcohol in her life, and for whatever reason, she gets pulled over and the police think she's DUI. We might consider that completely differently once you tell me that her whole group will come and testify at the first hearing saying she's never drank alcohol in her entire life, but she speaks funny, so it does sound like she's drunk. Something like that.
Yeah, she had a head injury or something like that.
Okay, we want to charge that differently.
Sure.
Completely differently. So,
but then there's the other where, and this is the piece of advice I was going to give as a concealed carry holder. If I was going to drink and drive, which I don't drink anyway, not for your reasons, but I don't like it. Don't carry your weapon with you, because that's another charge.
Separate charge for being drunk.
Possession of a firearm while intoxicated or something like that. I forget what it's called, but basically the gist of it. The interesting thing is that the law, what it's trying to prevent is people shooting guns when they're wasted, which is fair. But the way it gets applied is just, you have a gun, so
It's in your car while you're
in your possession. It's stupid.
So, and then some people say, hey, I have a DUI, and then it's a DUI with
I punched a cop,
child endangerment as well, because if you're DUI and driving while your kids are in the car, each kid could be a separate felony charge, okay?
Child abuse, neglect, or endangerment.
So sometimes people say, oh, it's a DUI, but we have to actually see what the facts are, what the information is. So ranges wildly. Simple DUIs, though, this guy's charging $8,500. We'll give you a deal better than that one, but not a guaranteed dismissal, I guess, because
that's true.
We're not paying off the cops. And
I don't know why when you said that, I just imagined that these people didn't actually do anything.
There had to have been some,
but that's how you'd get it dismissed.
That is how you'd get it dismissed. But this was
okay.
Yeah, this was, they were saying guaranteed dismissals.
We know you're DUI, but
because there's a ring.
Cut it out.
Because there's a ring. So
let the kids play, ref.
Racketeering charges. You mentioned death penalty. One of our good listeners, Alyssa, who I've never met, but she's a friend of yours. Alyssa King.
Nom Chomskins. Shout out.
I don't know. But she sent me, they're bringing back the firing squad.
Oh, yeah. She sent me that one.
She sent you this too?
South Carolina or something like that?
In the state of South Carolina, the facts were...
That's your second favorite Carolina.
Second best Carolina. A guy in like 2001, early 2000s, had beaten his ex-girlfriend's parents to death. Okay? Pretty bad crime.
Not in-laws, but girlfriend parents?
Girlfriend parents, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, cool. I don't think there was a marriage.
Do that.
So, very, very messed up situation. Very ugly situation.
And to beat somebody to death is not... It's not a fast thing.
Got sentenced to death penalty.
Okay.
All death penalty cases are often delayed a lot because there's appellate issues.
There's people that will appeal even if you don't want them to.
There's specific groups, advocacy groups that are want to prevent the death penalty. They think,
what's that group? Something LA, CLA, ACLU. ACLU, that's what it is.
I don't know if they're specific on that.
Aren't they all about that kind of stuff?
Well, there's civil liberties.
But they're saying that it's an 8th Amendment violation.
Okay, and what is the 8th Amendment? Let's just remind our listeners.
Cruel and unusual punishment.
So what is cruel and unusual punishment is decided by what our Supreme Court says is cruel and unusual punishment. And that changes as the justices change. And that's a big part of politics is what people think is, hey, Trump's going to put in conservative justices, and they think that those appointed by Republicans think that cruel and unusual punishment is higher bar for that, as the liberal justices might think lower.
There was one with respect to death penalty with children. There was that case of that kid out of Mississippi that was like 14, and it turns out he didn't actually do it, and they electric chaired him.
Yeah, this was the history of
the 60s
why
or whatever. And then they made it to where you cannot convict juveniles of a capital offense and sentence them to capital punishment. It can be a capital offense, but it has to be life without. It can't be. So I don't know all the ins and outs of it.
And there was some racial things on that one too, because the kid was black, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the South, in that time,
sure, it was definitely like straight in the middle of Jim Crow, all that crap. But I do know that it's not just, racial or whatever. It's literally all minors cannot be. And so that was one example. And I can't remember. I feel like we talked about that in law school. But also when you see the picture of that kid,
yeah,
dude, he looked like a fucking baby.
Yes.
I mean, he didn't look 14. I thought he looked
like
10.
12. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen the famous picture you're talking about.
It's crazy.
Austin, find the picture.
Yeah, put it in so that everybody can be sad.
Everybody.
Oh my God. Did I tell you what happened in court today?
You did.
With that sentencing?
Tell our listeners about what can happen. Sometimes we don't know what judge is going to be there. You mentioned Justice Cherry.
Cherry was there, yeah.
And he is is he a now Supreme Court justice or former Supreme Court justice?
I think.
And when judges want to take vacation
or have a sick day,
I had a judge sitting in today too.
Who'd you have?
Mark Stevens, and he's fair. He's great. But he'll sit in different Henderson.
Former.
So
born in 1944.
These retired judges come in for the day and they handle the calendar of whatever's on there.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we get thrown these curveballs not knowing that these judges are going to be there. Sometimes the retired judges will come in and kick it and say, hey, this is a little too complicated. This case has been going with this judge for so long. I'm going to defer ruling and push it
Or
out. Or sometimes they'll step up and make the ruling.
Inclined to make a decision that they don't want to, because it's somebody else's courtroom.
Yes.
Right? They're just standing in. They don't want to make that tough call, which is probably where I would do it. If I was going to, unless maybe that judge left some guidance.
Or left some notes. Yeah,
like, hey,
here's what I'm thinking here. Here's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And then,
or, I mean, who knows what they talk about? I mean, get inside the head of a judge. I don't
we've
have any
never
idea.
been judges.
Anyway, so he's standing in for Crawl in District Court 14 today, and there was a gal that was in there that was charged with grand larceny, attempt grand larceny, which is a wobbler. And we've talked about wobblers before. It's either a Category D felony or a gross misdemeanor. Gross misdemeanor is just like a big misdemeanor, but it's still not a felony. It can only carry a 364-day maximum penalty in jail and a $2,000 fine. But the felony can carry 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, depending. I think it's a 1 to 4 for a D, and $5,000 fine. And so it was what's called a right to argue. Alpha got up there for the prosecutor, and she did a great job. I mean, she summarized why the state was asking for what they were asking for. She had a pretty lengthy history. She had 14 failures to appear, a bunch of other stuff. And even though this is like a property crime, it was continual. She kept getting new charges. And these were old. So the defense highlighted that, she hadn't been in trouble in a while, that she's gotten into college. She's since had a kid who she brought to court with her. And this was the part that made me think of it because, saying put the sad picture up. She had nobody to take the kid. And so the judge sentenced her to the felony and a 19 to 48, which is what the state was asking for.
19 months to 48 months in prison.
In prison, Nevada Department of Corrections. And then the defense attorney was like, okay, because usually you're going to get one of two things. In a wobbler situation like that, typically it's going to be you're going to get the gross misdemeanor and maybe some time, or you're going to get the felony, but you're going to get probation. Right? That's splitting the baby down the middle. Instead, because of a record and like all these other things, she got the felony with time. And then the defense attorney's like, okay, well, can she get a week to surrender herself so she can take the kid to the dad? Dad lives in California. And based on the failures to appear and all that, Alpha had to argue. She did argue, had to argue, whatever, for
justice dictated
immediate custody.
Surrender.
Yeah.
And it remand.
It was like my jaw. I was like it was awful.
And sometimes you see those awful things in the justice system, right?
Yeah.
A lot of critics of the system say it is not a justice system.
It's a punishment system.
It's a punishment system.
But what is justice?
Who's to decide, right? The judges are the ones that get to decide.
Well, people decide. The people.
People decide.
The people.
She took a deal, though, right?
She did take a deal.
She surrendered herself to the mercy of the court.
Sure. And that's the
to
crap
decide
thing.
On a right to argue.
That's the crap thing with the right to argue. But again,
there's no guaranteed outcome on that.
With the RTA, I wouldn't expect it to go the way it did.
No, I from what you're telling me, I wouldn't have expected.
And I've called a couple attorneys already to talk about
getting a felony and getting the max time asked for. Usually it's somewhere in the middle.
And then let's say she did, they could have put her on PCU right then. PCU level 4, remand into custody, take down to PCU. You can get out for a week. Once you get PCU on, they didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
Right? So that we don't have to take your kid into custody. And the judge was like, I can't remember what he said. He said like, somebody contact Child Protective Services. And it's just,
yeah.
And then there was the kid was out in the hall with some nice lady who was just like, oh, I don't know you, but I'll watch her, and was like letting her watch an iPad. And shit.
And what was the nature of the crime? What was the nature of
grand
this
larceny?
crime?
Was a financial crime. I think it was something to do with like a trick roll or something like that.
Okay.
So she stole something from somebody, just money.
Somebody picking up a hooker.
Maybe. I don't remember the facts a lot because I was kind of halfway paying attention. I was halfway talking to Marchese about stuff.
Right.
About other pro tems and how we feel about our track and stuff. And then when it starts to go south, we like all glue in on it. And it's just like, holy shit.
You have those moments in the courtroom where you're thinking about your case and then you sense something and you start listening to what's going on, right?
Dude, but it like, you know me, bro. Like I don't usually like feel things except for like anger, but that like, it sucked.
Well, and you don't know the situation as well as the judge does, or as the judge thinks that they do, right?
The judge should know better than me.
The judge should know.
I'm going from the perspective of I'm a father, and Bobby's about that kid's age. That kid was like 18 months, 2 years old, not very big, little. Little. Very nice kid sitting, watching an iPad.
And there's
whatever.
always two sides to the story, right? Because
Sure.
somebody could argue if you don't
shouldn't
want
have brought
that
your
happen to
fucking
your
kid with you.
child,
Which I was going to
don't
say,
do the crime.
don't bring your kid to
Don't
court.
bring your kid.
But at the same time, bringing the kid, bargaining chip.
Yeah.
And if I don't want to go to prison.
And you have to be prepared for a situation like that. And as attorneys, we have to prepare our clients in felony situations when you have a long history. That's a possibility.
I would definitely not tell them to come alone.
Yeah. Because
Just
I was in Henderson a couple weeks ago and a mom was, kind of crying and telling her kid, hey, they might take me. And I was like, wow.
Then why the fuck is the kid by themselves?
Her mom was with her too.
Okay.
But
that's not as big a deal.
kind of trying to say goodbye to her kid that didn't know what was going on, kind of running around and like playing with toys. And it's like, man, this is serious stuff. But
I think whenever my folks got arrested, I was only in court with them one time. But it was just like because my grandma had to go for something. It was I want to say it was for sentencing, and they were figuring out how they were going to do the jail. So the judge there let one of them go, and the other one did the surrender date when the other one got out. So like my mom was watching
so somebody
me.
could have you.
My dad went in, and then when my mom went in, my dad was out, and so somebody.
We're unlocking some things here about why Justin feels so passionately about this. Let's not go down that road. Feelings and emotions.
I don't feel anything. I'm just saying, like, I remember that because I remember it was like after their initial appearance, and they took a deal real quick, and so my grandparents had to come get me that night, and I want to say I was in kindergarten. The weird things that I remember are like that it was like summertime, and so it was warm. The door was open, the front door screen was shut. Parents were cooking dinner, and they were like, "Oh, someone's knocking on the door. Go see who it is." Whatever, maybe it's a neighbor or something. Oh, it's a cop. Come on in. And it was a bunch of cops.
Oh, jeez.
And they raided the house. And then I remember my dad, they were going through my room, and I was pissed. We were just sitting on the couch, and I was like, why are you letting them do this? Why don't you fight? And he's like, don't do that. You deal with it now, and you fight it later.
Now you feel like your dad telling our clients not to like fight cops when they have valid search warrants,
where I
right?
learned it. That's where I learned it. Is I was a little kid, and my dad told me, in the best way he could, the way that I can remember. I mean, who knows what he really said, but in my mind, it's you don't fight him now, you fight him tomorrow.
Yeah,
but not like that.
I always admired the people in law school that were like, I want to do this when I get out of law school. This is my calling in life. Why I want to be an attorney. I went to law school thinking, man, I don't know what direction I want to take in my life, but I know this is a good degree to have, and being a lawyer might be a good job. I think
you played yourself, sucker.
I think we've both kind of happened upon our passion, opening this law firm together and practicing law. Because I had a friend ask me, what kind of law, would you prefer practicing? And we've talked about this before. We love doing criminal law.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we love being like that Saul Goodman type, like helping the people that need help.
Working with drug dealers.
That is the real, working with drug dealers. That is the real...
street pharmaceutical specialist, Your Honor.
That is the real justice system. This civil law stuff, getting money, sure, it's important, but criminal law is the real stuff. Like, that is real. You're helping real people. And
with the second most important thing protected by our Constitution, liberty.
What's the first?
Life.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to go the Second Amendment. Right to
no, that's what you use to protect those things.
That's part of liberty.
It's just a mechanism.
Right. Okay. Well,
but the 2A falls under the umbrella of liberty.
So and my point being, you have these personal things that have come out, that you didn't start practicing in criminal defense at all, right?
No, I was a prosecutor.
You were a prosecutor, did personal injury, did injury defense work too.
Briefly.
And then
fuck that.
Got into this
I have a problem lying with every breath that I take.
This criminal defense world is...
I said what I said.
It's exhilarating, it's fun, and it's the most rewarding to help somebody out with that aspect of, being acquitted of a crime or turning their life in the right direction.
But I can promise you that the moment in my career where my guts were in my stomach, my guts were in my throat, the single worst, was that fucking sentencing.
The highest highs and lowest lows.
Bro, I'm sitting there and he starts to panic. And so the reason I grabbed him was so that I wouldn't panic. Because I was like, I could see him, he started shaking and he's like, started like twitching and shit. And so I just grabbed him like, no, we got to hold still. Don't react. God, that sucked because that would have been 10 to life. times 2, bro.
You're saying the reading of a verdict.
Yeah. Well, what if I fucked it up?
Well,
what if I screw that up? Oh, you don't get a bunch of money? Oh, you're going to be fine. You're going to die in prison. That's on me. I did that because I'm an idiot. Right? Like that's, ugh. I'd rather get shot in the street. Truly. I'd rather get gunned down by somebody who wanted my wallet
heavy
than to screw up and have someone die in prison.
It's a heavy job. It's a heavy job.
Yeah.
Man.
Anyway, what were we talking about before I fucked it up with sad stuff?
We took a turn.
Austin, you're a dick.
We took a turn. All right, we were talking about the death penalty in South Carolina.
Happy stuff.
And firing squad.
Oh, yeah.
This is the first guy.
He's requesting it.
He requested the firing squad.
He's smart.
It's the first one in like 13 years, something like that. First one since Utah did it.
Utah did one like
in the 2000s or something like that.
2008.
So,
no, it's smart though. Look at all the problems they have with that fucking with the drug stuff.
So that was part of this article too.
Or the electric chair? Are you joking? I want to get fried.
They've done some studies of whether people actually do feel something when they get euthanasia, and some kind of numbers they looked at were like, oh wow, this is frightening that these people are probably feeling all these things right before dying.
Well, but that's not taking into account that Finnish or whatever drug company that was manufacturing one of the drugs for the cocktail decided they weren't going to sell it to us anymore. And so all of our drugs timed out. And that's why that Oklahoma execution got botched and that dude lived for like 2 hours.
Ugh.
And I'm pretty sure it's a...
there should be some fail safe if you're going to do it. Then
just
bring it, have the firing squad
load
back
them up
up.
on fucking morphine.
Yeah.
You go to
Before.
sleep.
Yeah.
No. Oh, shit. Well, I don't know why they're making it complicated. You could give someone fentanyl. They're done. The respiratory system shuts down. They're done.
I don't know, man.
I don't know. I'm not smart, but I think that the concoction that they use, it's a neurotransmitter thing. So it screws up like how your brain sends like your potassium and shit. So it's an involuntary muscle shut off, I'm pretty sure. And so that dude was like spasming and like shaking and like it didn't just shut him off like it's supposed to. Because I'm pretty sure it's basically like asphyxiation, but it's super quick.
Man.
It's supposed to be.
Can you imagine a total nervous system override?
No, but it's
more than that.
It'd be more like a neurotoxin from like some kind of animal.
So,
but not killing you quickly.
So
like,
I've heard in firing squad cases, I don't know if they said this. So do they only have one loaded with live rounds so that the stress of killing somebody isn't squarely on that one person? So they suppose, I don't know if that's a thing in South Carolina or if that's a thing that's planned out or anything like that.
I'm looking it up.
So we can figure that out, but the stress of killing somebody creates PTSD apparently. So I think that's why this isn't a preferred method.
Oh, well.
Because euthanasia, it's kind of, hey, this is the system. I'm just the one pushing the button, maybe pulling a trigger. There's something more specific about that. And I don't know how many rounds they unload on somebody, but I think this is supposed to happen tomorrow. In our timeline, we're today March 6th. So this could be March 7th.
In our timeline?
It could be March 7th that it's happening, but sometimes there's emergency motions, emergency relief orders. See these all the time. Oh, we're kicking it back. We're kicking it back a little bit longer.
I would pick firing squad. I think it's going to be quick.
I don't know what kind of rounds they're shooting at you.
It's probably a 308.
Do they put them on TV at all? Like, I know that they have done that because it's supposed to be a preventive measure, right? Preventative, like to tell the public, hey, if you commit crimes like this could happen to you. There's a balance of, hey, are we publicizing this so much that people want the notoriety?
So this is deathpenaltyinfo.org. Sorry to cut you off. It's just because it's important for us.
It always cuts me off.
Shut up. Whatever. I'm funny. For execution by this method, the prisoner is typically bound to a chair with other straps across his waist, head, in front of an oval-shaped canvas wall. The chair is surrounded by sandbags to absorb the prisoner's blood. A black hood is over his head. A doctor locates the heart with a stethoscope and pins a circular white cloth to it. Standing in an enclosure 20 feet away, 5 shooters are armed with 30 caliber rifles loaded with single rounds. One of the shooters is given blank rounds. South Carolina's execution protocol calls for the use of 3 shooters, each of whom is provided live rounds. Each of the shooters aims his rifle through a slot in the canvas and fires at the prisoner. The prisoner dies as a result of blood loss caused by rupture of the heart or a large blood vessel or tearing of the lungs. The person,
3 have live rounds and 1 doesn't?
no, all 3 have live in South Carolina. And most of them, it's 4 live, one dummy. The person shot loses consciousness when shock causes a fall of the supply of blood to the brain. If shooters miss the heart by accident or intention, the prisoner bleeds to death slowly. With a 30 cal, this is the area you're talking about. Even if they miss the heart, I don't think you're going to die slowly. You're going to die pretty quick. If you get hit 3 or 4 times. 308 is 30 caliber.
Yeah.
0.308. And at 20 feet away, the velocity that thing's going to have, and I'm assuming they're using ballistic tips. So it's something that's it's got a piece of plastic in the end of the hollow point to cause expansion quicker. The idea being that when a bullet hits, it mushrooms, even if it's just a soft tip, right? So a soft tip is like your standard steel jacketed round. It's going to flatten out. The skin is obviously not as hard as the wall or whatever, so it flattens less. But those ballistic tips, the idea is it does it so quickly, so it creates a massive wound channel instead of just being like a
Did
tiny
you say how many rounds they each shoot?
1.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay.
And from
Well,
20 feet, you can't really miss.
That's enough.
Yeah.
And these are trained individuals.
Dudes that are, and I'm sure
Do
that
they
they're
bring in
not,
like army guys or what?
I'm guessing it's just prison staff, Department of Corrections people.
Interesting.
But
Local police.
I don't know, man. Like, I wouldn't necessarily like, where am I applying for the firing squad job? But like, I don't know if I have to be involved in executions. I'd rather do something for the person that's going to make it to where it's quick and over rather than this, injection method where it could screw up. I mean, what if you're the guy that pulls the plug on that and the injections start going in and then 2 hours later, homie's still alive, sort of. Right? That would suck. Versus, we pulled the trigger and he dropped. I don't know. Just tough stuff. It's got to be a tough job, but somebody has to do it, and this is what the guy chose.
Yeah. Well, it's just an interesting. We talk about cruel and unusual punishment, death penalty. Some think that that's not appropriate. Our opinions don't matter. We'll never be on the Supreme Court. We'd argue against it because we're defense attorneys. And, well, I don't know if my client wanted it for a case. What? Wouldn't you do what your client wanted?
Yes.
What if your client wanted it? Like wanted to be killed?
Like that one that Van Boskirk was on whenever I was at the appellate office. Like everybody was asking for the death penalty except for some random group and his attorneys. It's
right.
Like,
Well, what if? Yeah, I mean, if
including the client,
as a defense attorney, if your client did a crime heinous enough to deserve it, and you could understand that it was warranted, would you allow him to have it? Would you have any qualms about that? Would you have any moral crisis over that?
Nope.
Okay.
I mean, I'd probably get him checked out, like comped.
Yeah.
Make sure he was cool. And if he was like of sound mind and he was like, look, I did this. I'm ready to meet my maker. I've made peace with this. I'm going to ask forgiveness, whatever. How are you going to take that person's autonomy?
Yeah, because if they were out of custody, they could just, do it themselves, right?
And I don't advocate for that at all. It's a different scenario.
I understand.
But-
I'm just saying
and
that
I got it,
that's
but
an option for them.
But I'm just saying, like, you're standing in their shoes for their judgment. That's not my place. Also, I'm not an opponent of the death penalty. I'm not necessarily a proponent, but I'm certainly not an opponent. I understand the utility of it. And I also understand that there are certain things that, like, if we're talking about justice, what else is justice?
And I think everybody's mind would change on that depending on if they're the victim of the crime, right?
Sure.
Or if their family member is the victim of the crime. I think everybody supported, Saddam Hussein being killed.
Timothy
right?
McVeigh.
Like
Timothy McVeigh got death penalty quick.
Everybody will support it when
It was
they
like
see
3
the
years.
crime being sufficient enough. There's some people who are against it no matter what.
Well, I think the issue is, and this was the thing I was going to say, like a caveat, if we can live in a perfect world, Harry Potter cast a spell, whatever. No false convictions. If there was 100% correct conviction rate, like
Right.
if there was some third person omniscient viewpoint we could have, I feel like a lot of people
Play the video back, yeah.
I feel like a lot of people would be like, all right, well, can't complain now.
Yeah, I see that. All right. In the news, speaking of murderers, Casey Anthony is back. She's back. She's on
was
TikTok.
6 years is how long he was on death row, McVeigh, which is fast.
That is extremely fast.
Yep.
Casey Anthony is back. For those of you who don't remember, if Casey Anthony was happening this year, we would be talking about her constantly. She was just in the news so much for being accused of killing her child. Okay. And then going out to party after her child was dead. The prosecution in that case apparently didn't have sufficient evidence to convict her for the crime because a jury of her peers found her not guilty of murder. And not putting that up.
Oh, no, we're not putting it up.
Not guilty of murder, but guilty of some lesser crimes of falsifying evidence or destroying evidence, something like that. So not convicted of the big crimes, convicted of the lesser crimes. She now wants to be a legal advocate. She's not a lawyer, probably won't ever be a lawyer, but she believes because she went through this process as a defendant, she can now advise other people. So my question's twofold on this. One, I was critiqued by some friends for even following her. I hit follow on TikTok just to see.
You follow her TikTok?
Or I just did because, I wanted to see what she posts. Like this is relevant to our conversations. Does that support somebody? They say, yeah, she can make money off of my one follow. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'll unfollow. It's not that big of a deal. I don't really care. I don't really care. And then my second question is, who can give you legal advice and who can get in trouble for it? Is there a potential prosecution? I don't know what state she's in. I think she was in Ohio, which explains a lot. But
what does that mean?
Here in Nevada, people in Ohio are nothing. I won't say anything about Midwest people.
Midwest is the best West.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
I'm from there. Shout out.
All right. So her giving legal advice. What's
She's
the line?
An advocate? What does that mean? Like a victim advocate or like
no,
a criminal advocate?
Just like there's form preparers and stuff, non-attorneys who give legal advice, and then there's all these sovereign citizen coaches too who don't call themselves sovereign citizens. So I see this pop up though, like legal coaches or legal advisors or something like that. Do you know the line, Justin, between what they can and can't do? Non-attorneys, what they can and can't do.
They can't give legal advice, legal advice is like, we always draw hard lines on things like explaining and signing releases, explaining agreement to settle, like attending hearings, obviously, purporting to be an attorney, negotiating cases. They can't do those sorts of things. But there's a lot of stuff that people can do.
I mean, there's a lot of advice you could just give to a friend, right? Hey, what would you do if you were in a car wreck? I'd go see a lawyer. That's kind of legal advice, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I've never had a case. I've never seen a case prosecuted for somebody, purporting to be a lawyer, wrongful, legal representation or anything like that. But it is a crime, right? It is a crime. So we don't know what's going to happen in her case. But
did you know that with respect to Casey Anthony, they were about to give them information about a software discrepancy, but the jury came back with a verdict before, but it was exculpatory evidence. And if the prosecution hadn't disclosed it and it would have been a guilty verdict, it would have been mistrial.
Oh.
And crazy thing, jury deliberations began on July 4th that year.
Why is that crazy? Just on a holiday?
The holiday? The freedom holiday? I don't know, man. It's just weird. Anything that happens on July 4th is badass.
Why are they even in court on July 4th? Should have been a holiday.
It's Casey Anthony murder trial.
Yeah, I guess. And the jury, typically on deliberations, the judge gives the jury power to pick, if they want to stay late, if they wanted to do weekends or something like that. You got to be there at the prescribed time, 9 to 5, like on weekdays, our typical American business work week. But you can stay late with the court's permission. There has to be security measures there. There has to be guards. There has to be people in attendance. But I guess maybe they could choose to start deliberations on July 4th because juries want to be done. If they can come to an agreement, they want to be done.
She was sentenced in each of the 4 line counts to 1 year and $1,000 each consecutive, but she already had 1,000 days credit, so she's released 10 days after that.
Oh, 1,000 days, 4 years. Yeah, I guess that almost adds up there. Man, and that's typical with murder trials. You are waiting for years.
But she was ruled to pay $217,000 to the state of Florida.
For what?
It's a Florida statute requiring judges to assess investigative and prosecution costs if requested by a state agency.
Oh,
And the
okay.
prosecution asked for $500,000 in reimbursement.
So she's maybe trying to pay off her debt still, huh?
Probably.
I don't know. Well,
And you're helping.
and I'm helping by hitting the follow button.
Oh, who
That's-
cares?
That's
Just
right.
follower, your one doesn't count. You only get how much? What's it take to get monetized?
On TikTok, at least 5,000 followers.
Yeah.
Which she hits.
Yes.
And then it's a number of views, which I guess if we keep talking about it, that just pushes her more into the
we should
realm
hashtag
of
Casey Anthony. This podcast.
no, we're not gonna. Okay, well,
Our producer SEO, you want to grow? Hashtag Casey Anthony. Don't you know?
she's back. She is back in the news.
Look at that rhyme skills.
One of the most famous criminal defendants for murder.
Very famous in the last 15 years for sure.
Very sad situation. I mean,
Yeah, a little girl died.
Never-
in a bad way. It sounded like.
never seemed like she
Dude, that was the crazy.
felt any
bit.
remorse
Like, she
either.
just-
Like I mean, I think everyone agrees that she did it, but again, as criminal defense attorneys, we have to hold the prosecution to their standard of proving beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a high standard,
Beehive.
that
In the land.
she committed the crime. And there was, I guess, just not enough evidence for that. They just had a very circumstantial case with nothing really to stick her on, which is,
She had an unrelated check fraud conviction. She had to serve a year of probation after this.
yeah, well. Oh, Austin, we got a listener question. Is it in here?
I
Okay.
hope it's a good one.
With it being tax season, how bad are the penalties for tax evasion?
Oh,
Man, don't mess with the IRS.
are we talking? What kind of penalties do we mean? Like the
That's the,
the
question.
time or okay? So I do know, and I only know this because I did the low income taxpayer clinic when I was in Syracuse as part of my co-curricular program in estate planning. Shout out, Professor Nassau, Robert Nassau.
Okay.
Bad man, as far as like he knows the code, right? And his thing was he hated quote fucking liars, people that cheat on their taxes. And he also used another phrase: pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. So I know for a fact that when you are late or when you misfile something, you're going to be assessed some civil penalties and interest from the date of filing. So let's say you owed $1,000, but you only paid $800. From the date that you should have paid that extra $200, you're going to have interest on that $200 up until the point that you're adjudicated, and I believe the interest keeps going, and massive penalties. So there's going to be a financial element of it that's fucking monstrous. That being said, there are ways to get around that. You can do things like offers and compromises. There's all kinds of ways, but in order to do that, you have to engage in the adversarial system of the tax code, like with the tax court. They're overworked, so if you're not one of like the crazy ones, you'll probably do okay. Like I had a guy that I saved a ton of money doing an offer and compromise, and it was just like going through all of his statements and an itemized list. It was real fucking boring. That's why I chose not to do it. But you can avoid some of that stuff if you can negotiate well. That being said, you can also go to prison.
You can, yeah, and it seems like that's how they've gotten the mobsters, right?
Al
Is
Capone.
tax evasion. So they can. I think for the common man, that's not going to happen. There's going to be a fine, and then your next tax return, they're going to take all that money,
Yeah.
and then the next one after that, they're going to
Until
take
they
all
get
that
their
money until they get all their money. That's typically
So-
what it is, but there is a small percentage that they'd want to prosecute. But
26 USC section 7201, 100,000 to 500,000 for a fine, and 5 years in prison, up to.
we've never handled that. We'd refer you to somebody if you had
I'm not
if
doing
you had
that.
a tax evasion
I'm
case.
not doing that.
I have a buddy that's a tax lawyer. Maybe we'll have him on so we can all take naps.
Love that.
Boy, listen, because that would be the most boring thing, wouldn't it? Stay tuned. In 5 seconds, Justin will be getting tased.